Okay, we were asked to take another look at the AR180, the rifle here that was made by Armalite and was in running with the AR15 or the M16 to be the military service rifle back in the day. Of course, the M16 won out, and now we have millions of different versions of AR15s on the civilian market. So I thought I would definitely jump on that request. It has been a long time since we've talked about the AR180, and we have this AR to compare it with. So I guess let's get started. To begin with, just looking at them from the distance here, you can see that both of them work with the same bayonets. Those are totally interchangeable. They're both, the AR180 and the M16 were both built to the same spec, where the AR has a much larger front sight post, where the AR180 has a smaller gas or sight post that's much smaller with the gas block, but they both function the same way. This is where the gas comes out from the barrel and works the action, and same here on the AR. However, because of the design of the AR, the front sight needs to be quite a bit higher. As we look at the hand guards, very similar. However, since the AR180 really never went into production, it never evolved like the AR15 or M16 handguards, but they started out very similar. We come down to the receivers, and this is where the similarities are going to start to change quite a bit. Now, they actually both use the same type of magazine. The AR180 magazine release is essentially in the same place as the AR15. However, if we look at the two magazines, although they're both the same dimensionally, and in fact magazines can swap out to either rifle, the main difference is on the AR15 the catch needs a hole on this side of the magazine, where on the AR180 the mag catch is looking for that notch on the opposite side. So again, in effect, with a Dremel tool you could put both notches on your magazines and run them in either rifle. But if we take a closer look at their magazine wells, we'll see some differences in their construction. The AR-15 is a milled receiver, which basically means a block of steel that has a lot of holes and things cut into it, where the AR-180 is a stamped receiver. In other words, it's a piece of flat steel that's folded and bent into shape. And I don't know if that's super obvious there, but we'll take a closer look at that as we go along. Pistol grips, basically the same, not a lot of difference there. And then when we get into the stock, we're going to see a lot of difference. Briefly, the biggest difference is the AR180 is able to completely fold at the end of the receiver, much like an AK-47, where the AR-15 and 16 can only use an adjustable type of stock because, in effect, because of the way the gun works, it needs this much room for a spring and for the bolt carrier to travel. So there's really no way, without changing the function of the rifle, to remove the stock or to fold it or anything like that. But you can see, because the AR-180 can fold, it can fold to a quite a bit shorter distance, even with a 20-inch barrel versus the 16-inch barrel. So if we hold the two barrels up next to each other, you can see that the AR-15 only has a 16-inch barrel, where that AR-180 has a 20-inch barrel, but because the stock can fold, it can fold to a smaller overall package than even the AR-15 with its stock collapsed all the way. Now let's take a look at more differences on the receivers. They both shoot 5.56 by 45 or 223. However, the AR-180 is a stamped receiver designed to be built quickly with fewer machine tools and fewer machining processes. Let's take this one apart and get an idea what the internal mechanisms look like. To take down an AR-180, there's a little button on the back here. Just kind of push that in. Very similar to an AK-47. We've got two springs that go forward, but again, the springs going forward as opposed to back is again very much like the AK-47. Then we pull out the bolt. The carrier's handle can remove. The bolt and carrier will remove completely, and we're looking again at a bolt that's very much like an AR-15, but also very much like an AK-47. It travels in an upper receiver that in this case is bent, again stamped, single flat sheet of steel that's folded and bent and shaped and welded into the three-dimensional shape that they wanted. However, it is designed very much like an AR-15 or M16 in the fact that there's an upper and lower to the receiver. On the AR180, the lower portion has a serial number, so that's the registered firearm. Again, because the springs all go forward, its stock is able to fold and it is able to fire while the stock is folded. To put it back together, simply make sure the bolt's all good to go, slide it down into the upper receiver, so you get to the point where the charging handle or the carrier handle can be reinserted. Slide the bolt all the way forward, then reinsert the two recoil springs. Push this lock back into the upper. And it all fits back together and locks into place. Very efficient design, very similar to the AR-15, very similar to the AK-47. Obviously one of the reasons I really like it. In comparison, on the AR-15, this is a poor example because I'm using a plastic lower receiver. However, with a metal lower receiver, the parts look pretty much exactly the same. We've got a lower receiver made out of milled aluminum, an upper receiver milled out of aluminum as well. Sometimes these are extruded depending on the manufacturer. They have a charging handle on the top with a gas system that blows the carrier back. That brings a lot of dirt and things into the, or potentially brings a lot of dirt and things into the receiver. Can potentially make it dirtier. It makes the gas system, since the gas system runs on top of everything, it's all lifted up a bit. And because of the design with the charging handle, like I say, the sights are quite a bit up from the bore, which can make sighting a little bit difficult sometimes. As far as the optics platform, on an AR-15, of course got the iron sights, but the iron sights can be taken off for this rail and then optics can be installed. It's not necessarily an either or, just this particular rifle happens to be set up where the rear sight needs to be removed. Rear sights can be added behind the optics, or optics can be added to the top of the carry handle. The AR180 came out long before the Picatinny rail was developed, so it uses its own proprietary style of connection, which I'm sure has its roots somewhere else. But you can see the V shape on the top of the receiver is just welded on there, but it's held in place and it's in a line with the barrel. And on the bottom of its mount, which is a sturdy 2-position mount, you have a lock on the front. You have a plunger on the back there. The plunger is spring-loaded and will push against the front of the rear sight. Once the sight base is brought down and the plunger's all the way compressed, it'll slide forward, the two V's interact, and then the locks at the front there to keep it in place so that it doesn't jar back and forth with recoil. Then you've got your optic, and you've got the ability to run your iron sights right underneath the optic. Let me fold the stock and I can show that to you. But the iron sights are still available there right through the sight post. Makes for a nice long range and some still follow-up quick shots at closer range. The AR180 has a dust cover similar to the AR-15. Its mag release is in the same place as the AR-15. Magazines insert just about the same way. However, there is a channel on the front of the trigger guard that correlates with the channel on the back of magazines, and it helps it guide right in. The selector is very much like an AR-15 on this side, and then it's also ambidextrous right away. Now the reason it's ambidextrous is because when the stock is folded, you can flip it to safe, but you can't flip it back. So it kind of needed to be ambidextrous, but that gives you the ability to use the firearm when the stock is folded. There's a little stud here on the side of the mag well that grabs this little pocket on the stock. They just lock together so that with just a little bit of pressure you can pop the stock right open. Again, makes for quick access. So how much do they weigh? I've got the AR180 here with its scope, an empty magazine, and an M7 bayonet. And we'll try to just kind of hold it here and get a rough idea. It's right about 9 pounds, 8 ounces. I'm going to go ahead and remove the scope, the bayonet. So now it's just the empty AR180 with its 30 round magazine and sling. Right about 7 pounds, 12 ounces. So to be fair, we're going to use an aluminum lower receiver with this for the weigh-in. And even though there's a million different ways to put together an AR-15, this particular one comes in at right about 8 pounds, 1 ounce. So we'll remove the Surefire 60 round mag and the USMC bayonet. And we're at 6 pounds, 11 ounces. But there's a lot of different ways to configure an AR-15. I would consider the AR-180 and the AR-15 about the same weight generally, although you can build an AR-15 to be quite a bit lighter than the AR-180. So this is the AR-180. There's a few different models of it. There is a modern AR-180B that was produced for a few years. However, Armalite doesn't get enough requests for this rifle to put it into production for any length of time. At least that's what they tell the fans. Hopefully that was another interesting couple of minutes about the AR-180. Perhaps sometime we can do a live vlog or take the discussion over to our chat and get some real enthusiasts there and accumulate some photos of some of the different variations and varieties and models of the AR-180. As always, thanks for watching.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thanks for watching gunwebsites.com.